Hello, Bristol.
Hello.
Hello.
Yay. Yay. So I don't know if you caught what I just said, but we're kind of an experiment to see if this is even going to work.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
How's the quality on that end?
Oh, actually, that's better now.
So you can hear us okay?
Yeah, there's no echo now, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
Nice. Good.
We can hear you, and we can see you well enough to have a little bit of visual. So maybe we should just start with your Nova Etherpad of topics and try to talk over a couple things and see if we can make any progress. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So I posted the Nova Etherpad in the Cinder channel. If anyone wants to take a look there, there's a section, what's it called again? Cross-project items. It has a few Cinder Nova topics.
Yeah, I believe the Cinder Etherpad in the Nova section on line 349.
So should we take the first one there, OS Brick and Oslo Privsep with Sean Dagg and Walt? Sure.
Yeah, let's do preset.
What's that? What was that, John?
We're muted. How come?
Oh, that was a yes?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
No, this is my laptop.
Okay.
So, so Privsep with OS Brick. So I talked with Gus a couple weeks ago about migrating Brick to using Privsep, and it's going to take a while, I think. He wasn't sure how to do the permissions exactly correct, so I just said, hey, can we get it to the point of having a wrapper in OS Brick that allows it to do basically what we're doing now, which is giving root access to any of the commands that we're trying to execute, which is kind of what root wrap is giving us. He was trying to make it more complicated because of the extra features that Privsep allows. But I just said, hey, for the first cut, can we make it work like root wrap just with Privsep instead, so we can migrate Nova and Cinder to using it as a first step, and we can change it later. So he started putting up more patch sets against what he has now. He has a single patch in OS Brick that's against the remote FS portion of Brick as a first step, and we're churning through that a little bit. I haven't checked this week yet to see what the status is just yet, though.
So,
Hi. I'm Angus. So that patch, as far as I know, is ready to go. Obviously, I haven't tested it against anything. I don't have any of the hardware, so I haven't done any more testing than what the the OS Brick CI test.
Okay.
And of course, it's only against remote FS.
Yes. I'm not sure if we have a remote FS configured CI, though.
That would make it much easier for it to pass it, wouldn't it? Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so Eric Carney says that we have one which is configured for Gluster FS.
Okay. Yeah, there's a Ceph. No, just going off the names of the jobs. There's a Ceph one, and there's an LYO, whatever that means. I'm just trying to remember what I saw in the DevStack test. Anyway, so I can't do any more testing on it than what I've done. So I don't know what you need to do at this point to feel confident with it, but I can't do any more than stare at it as much as I have.
Okay.
do we want to back up a step? Because we spoke a bit about this yesterday, and we were kind of coming to the same conclusions that the critical piece is if when we release Mitaka, we really want to be on Privsep so that we don't have the whole lockstep configuration, right? So let's do the that minimal patch to basically say throw command across wire.
Yeah, so just so you guys are clear, in that room, we talked about this here yesterday. So I can easily do a drop-in replacement for root wrap. What that means is it's basically something that just runs commands as root.
Right. Yes.
So there's no checking on what commands are run as root because we haven't stopped to put the logic in there to do the validation anywhere.
Okay. I think that's a good first step.
Yeah, right. Just so everyone's clear what we're doing here. We're allowing pretty much any commands to run as root, which, as I pointed out yesterday, is not a big departure from where we are already because there's already so many ways to get root through the existing root wrap filters config.
Yeah.
So we should feel bad about it, but it's not a huge regression from where we currently are, in my opinion.
Just to clarify, it's different than today's root wrap because you're not specifying the commands. You're just saying anything that goes through that mechanism, whatever the command is, just gets root. There's no.
So how this is meant to be used, if we had the time to do it all properly, is you go a little bit further up the stack. So instead of saying run this command, you say instead I want to do this higher level operation, and then inside the privileged code, work out if that requires running commands or whatever. You build the command lines, but you've already got the context of knowing what the higher level operation is meant to be. But root wrap already comes in at a very low level. It was one of the issues I was trying to fix with root wrap. It comes in at a very low level. So you're given something like a chmod command line, and you have no idea if those arguments are correct or plausibly correct at all.
Sure.
So I can, at the moment, we have some checks in the root wrap filters for some sort of validation on the command lines, but there's some big holes in that. So I can do a very quick and dirty replacement of what we currently have to run root wrap to use privsep instead to run commands, but then there'll be no validation at all because there's no logic there at all to check exactly what commands are run. So I think it's like as a compromise just to get the thing done right now, we can certainly do that and it'll certainly be quick.
Yeah.
But we should all be very clear as to its insecurity.
Yeah, I mean, so to me that feels really dirty, but it sounds like you guys already discussed it and sounds like you kind of hashed it out, so that's cool with me.
Right. So I mean, if you look at the current root wrap filters file for OS Brick and for Nova for that matter, it has lots of gaping holes already in it.
Yeah.
So even though we're supposedly checking right now, we're still doing things like allowing DD with any command line arguments as root. We're still allowing chmod with any command line arguments as root. So there's lots of holes right now that you could trivially get root through.
Yeah, there's at least 5 ways that you could exploit the system and do anything you want.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's totally fair. I was just looking, so there's been cases in the past where people have submitted, different things, and we've been able to identify, hey, this is a bad thing because we've caught it specifically because the command was in the root wrap, right?
Yeah.
It'll make it a little harder, but it doesn't. By no means does it really make the problem any worse or better, so that's fine.
It seems like the #1 priority at this point has to be the decouple for upgrade, because we got ourselves in a really weird place at the end of last cycle.
Yep, I'd agree.
So fix that this cycle, do the dirty thing, and then work on doing the right thing in Newton.
Yep, I agree with that.
Yep.
And for what it's worth, those root wrap filters, those definitions have been around for a long time, too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Those aren't anything new just because we moved them to Brick themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they all came from Nova and Cinder, so.
No, they were in Nova for a long time. Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
I should put a quick change in that does the horrible thing for OS Brick, just to give a run commands interface for OS Brick. What do you want to do with the remote FS change as it is? We can pause that and come back to it later.
Well, if someone knows remote FS better than I do, then we can have someone test it and see if we can get a CI up for it. I would like to see CI passing for it if we can, but there's no reason why we couldn't put up another patch to do the rest of it.
Right.
Yeah.
In parallel. So
Yeah, absolutely. We can do it in parallel. Yep. So that's in your court now, the remote FS one. I don't know what more to do to test it.
Okay. I can do some testing on it myself too.
Yep.
So do we think that over like the next 2 weeks we could have the dirty thing up, reviewed, landed, and an OS brick release out? Because we need that within some window of time that we actually can be running confident enough with all the rest of the system running and testing before we get to milestone 3.
Another conference next week, but yeah, I can do it. It's really not that much typing, so yeah, I can do that, and then it's just a search and replace once I've got the basic little function in there.
Because we're quite towards the library freeze deadline of M3, and we need to get, realistically, we need to get that one out, and the bug fixes.
Yeah. Now then, the other related, let's say yes, I can do it. So then the other matter there was Duncan Thomas, I think his name was, his comment on that remote FS change, where his concern was that there was a bunch of new code, and from a deployer's point of view, he was nervous about the big change and would like to have some sort of either way to go back to the root wrap version or something. I don't know how to express the different priorities there and work out what to do. Doing both simultaneously is quite a bit of code, and if you look at the larger refactor as done in the remote FS patch, in my opinion, the bits that are most likely to break are the remote FS refactoring that I've done without access to any hardware. So if you then put an extra little hook on the end to try to go back to root wrap, I think, you still got a lot of risk there. So I'm not sure how to juggle these different priorities.
Since your root wrap, since your preset filters are very permissive, I hadn't realised that was how permissive they are. It's a much lower risk. I think, if we were trying to do clever, tight security filters as well as putting all this in, I'd be a lot more nervous than I am. So maybe I'm less nervous hearing that you're going for very permissive filters first.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, so that sounds good. That means that can be then more of a discussion next cycle.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We look at trying to lock it down to something more reasonable.
Yep.
Yeah,
because. Yeah.
All right, it's a quick and dirty thing, and then we'll have conversations all over again with a bit more time to think about it.
Yep. Sounds good. Anything else on this one?
We're saying talk at this at the summit, basically, I guess.
Is there anything I need to do on the Cinder side to migrate this? I've only looked at it from the Nova point of view so far, and there's nothing really there other than making sure it's a tested combination, I think.
I think some of the CIs that we have in place for Brick actually do, a lot of the Cinder DSVM full tests anyway. So it's testing Cinder with it, right? Okay. So we just need to get our HP CI back up and running. We're working on migrating to Common CI, which has been causing us problems. But once that's back up and running, we can hook that back up into the Brick patches and rerun those, and that will do all the Cinder testing, at least with an iSCSI driver and an FC driver. So that's something.
Okay, cool.
But I'll make a priority to help do reviews on the stuff and try and get it in as quickly as possible.
Yeah, all right. I'll ping you directly then over IC when I've got things I want you to look at.
Okay, great. Thank you for all the work. This was great.
Yeah, no worries.
Are we holding up things that are adding root wrap filters to Nova?
Yes.
Huh. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Are we holding them?
Yeah, that was we're holding up.
So the question is, on the Nova side, we are blocking any new changes that add any new filters to the Nova side. Like this has to get done and landed first, and people are going to go in through Brick.
Yep, that's fine.
Which is part of the let's try to get this sorted within the next 2 weeks, because that will let those things happen.
Okay.
Do the ASAP thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Cool. Thank you, folks.
Thanks. Great.
Which is the next one down?
Cinder volume multi-attach.
What do we have to discuss about that? I think we've almost merged, Matt?
Yeah.
We've almost merged everything that we're going to merge in Mitaka, right?
No.
We should consider that. Whoever's talking about it.
Into the conversation pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi all.
Hi.
So there's still a compute manager and a libvirt change. We have a Tempest test. The Tempest test passes, but the volume, there's a bug. Nicola knows about the bug. If you have two attachments to the same volume, when you detach the first time, it terminates the connection on the host. So the second attachment is basically busted.
Yeah, is this LVM?
Yeah, but the issue is on Nova side as well. I mean, we call out to disconnect volume when we detach the first attachment on that host.
Yeah,
And then it calls out to Westbrick and removes the initiator as well. So it's buggy on both sides. Or not buggy, but not prepared for multi-attach cases.
Is that an issue on any storage that exposes multiple LUNs over the same target?
Yep.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. So that would break me too.
That would break most.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would break most. Yep. So I have a fix in just for LVM, and John and I kind of talked about reworking that a little bit. But we still have the Nova side to issue to work out, though, right?
You mean the disconnect volume part, right?
Yes. Yep. Not calling disconnect volume if another instance on that host has that volume.
Yes.
Yep. So the way we're tracking it on the Cinder side is that we pass the host along in attached volume, and we track that in the Cinder database. So that way the volume manager on terminate connection doesn't call remove export. For at least in the LVM case, that's an option for some drivers, but that's less than ideal, right? So we still have the Nova side to deal with.
So what's
the Nova side?
Yeah, what is the
piece?
Nova part of this?
Not calling disconnect volume for the libvirt volume driver, because that will remove the volume from the host kernel.
Right, but that's calling off to Brick, right? Does Brick have any knowledge of any of this?
No.
Multi-attach?
No. Brick has no knowledge other than the connection information that's passed into it, which is going to give it a path or paths to a single volume. So it has no idea that there are multiple uses of that volume, right? It just has a path, which is a single path and/or a multi-path device that it knows, which that it discovers based upon that connection information that Cinder tells it.
It makes no sense for Brick to be making
So
Cinder API calls, right?
We have to.
That means we have to have a multi-path conditional check in the libvirt code, I guess.
One of the things.
Not multi-path, but multi-attach.
Right, not multi. It's a different book, yeah. Multi-attach, yeah.
So we have to go look at all the attachments outside of Nova from Cinder to decide whether.
So one of the things that I've been looking at on the Cinder side, and I don't know. I looked in the Nova code a little bit, and I have no idea how doable this would be. I'm not even sure I can make it work in Cinder the way things are right now. But rather than actually sharing that single attachment and that single connection, actually when you do multi-attach, even if it's to the same node, just actually create another connection and treat it as an independent connection. And then that way you can go ahead and just delete and remove all you want because it only affects that one particular.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not nearly as efficient, but like seriously.
You want to jump in the pit?
Just tell him he asked you that.
Dan Smith said you should do that. Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly what we do with the free car drivers, is that we do a brand new export for every attachment, regardless of the volume itself.
Yeah, that's just gonna be so much easier.
Us trying to like garbage collect this and like address people down there.
Yeah, if we can avoid that, let's do that thing.
I'll try and pick that back up on the Cinder side. I'm assuming somebody on the Nova side can either help me out or take a look at it on that side.
So is this a bug fix, or how does this?
It's a prep fix, isn't it?
Well, I think it's I guess you would call it, it's not a bug fix, it's a change in direction on how we approach multi-attach, right?
Right. So I guess the Nova plan for Mitaka for multi-attach was to land all the compute manager side stuff and then enable it in the API in Newton.
So this is okay because we only have the multi-attach problem on a new compute node, right?
No.
Because the old compute nodes won't support multi-attach. Or is it, no?
The problem is that they'll look up the wrong attachment because they assume there's only one.
Right.
So we have to land this and then let a cycle pass.
Okay, no, sorry. Yeah, for the attachment, yes. I'm thinking about this particular bug is only problematic for Newton compute nodes, isn't it?
No.
No.
Because it's the multiple export.
Because if you, I think it's, I always get lost thinking about this. If you have a volume attached on a Mitaka compute,
Right.
and it's multi-attach volume,
Right.
then you could also attach it to a Newton instance.
Correct. Which is why we need to do the changes we're trying to do right now. Agreed with that.
In Nova Compute,
Right.
in Mitaka.
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing about that. I'm arguing about the bit that John was talking about. Like, if we brought the two exports from one compute, making sure that, well, if you only got one export from the Nova compute with two attaches on it, making sure that we do that. It's a single host problem, right?
Yeah, but what's preventing you from attaching that same volume to another Mitaka?
There's nothing that's not a bug in that case.
John, if we don't, if Mitaka doesn't support multi-attach, then we're going to actually allow you to do multi-attach to instances if they happen to be on Newton compute nodes. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I was trying to say that the problem we have where we need to work out which exports on a particular hypervisor we need to get rid of will only happen on the hypervisor where we can actually do multi-attach.
Yeah, I get that, but
that's what I was trying to say. Like,
I'm worried about the case where you allow multi-attach on, like, how does the API is going to say, okay, we'll do that multi-attach thing, right? And if it happens to be on a Newton compute node, then it'll succeed. And if it happens to be on a...
Oh, sorry, I see. We're saying, yeah.
But then we go migrate something from a Newton compute node.
Yeah, I moved on. Sorry. So, yeah, we need to fix it now.
Yeah, you guys lost me, but basically the way I look at it is just don't release it the way it is today and fix it before Mitaka.
Yeah, we need to do that. So, is that a change to every single brick driver?
No. It's actually, it's not that big of a deal, really. It's just, there's a couple of things on the Cinder side, the way the multi-attach stuff is right now, that is going to make it a little bit more difficult, but it's not, it's certainly not like far-reaching down to every driver or out to multiple places or anything like that. It's fairly well contained.
Yeah, let's just do an export for each volume then. That makes sense.
But we're still going to go ahead with, like, the compute manager and the libvirt driver changes in Nova in Mitaka.
Yeah, we would need to.
In order to not break, all you have to do is land the thing that we landed the thing that I did, and then if we just use that everywhere, then we're looking at the wrong attachment. Right?
Yeah, but you can't.
You're saying we have to land the libvirt and the compute stuff to actually do the multi-attach, but without the API bit.
Right. So if your Newton API is talking to a Mitaka compute, the virt driver is going to have to support it.
So this, we could then do my initial So we were talking about doing my service version thing to prevent you from doing this in order to protect your Mitaka computes from or your Liberty computes from looking up the wrong attachment ID. But if we did the service version thing purely for allowing attach, then we could say no multi-attaches until all your compute nodes are upgraded, right?
So Newton, yeah.
That way we would be safe from looking up any bad corrupting data, but we just wouldn't allow any of them to complete until all of them have been upgraded.
Yeah, that works.
And then we don't have to land the stuff in Mitaka to do the actual support of
Okay. I mean, we already, while you were on vacation, merged some compute side stuff. but
For the detach, yeah. For the detach, we really had to, but in my opinion, we can do the attach parts as well and enable it on the API, just how we discussed it last week.
well, we landed the detach stuff under the assumption that you would be able to attach on Mitaka computes. And what Dan is saying is that when you get the API request to attach, you don't allow it if you still have Mitaka computes.
Oh, don't allow it at all. Wow.
Right.
Yeah, we can do that.
Well, the patch is already landed, so.
Wait, ignoring that patch, the basic idea is right. We can't support it until you've upgraded your API nodes to Newton anyway. So all we do is while you're in the mixed mode where you've got Mitaka computes and Newton computes, just to make the testing and everything else so much easier, we just say the API just says, hey, no multi-attach until you've done a full upgrade and your upgrade is fully complete, right?
We landed a detach in the compute API, right? But not the REST API. Right. So you can't do anything.
You can't do anything with it.
Right. So it doesn't matter that that's landed.
No, I know.
No,
It's just
attach has more information now.
But what? Okay, but it doesn't matter. Right?
it doesn't hurt anything. It's just not going to get.
Yeah, it
used.
doesn't hurt. It's fine.
Anyway, I don't. This is just a suggestion. It's just
No.
an option. It would because I don't know how else. It doesn't seem like a huge caveat to say you can't multi-attach until you've fully done your upgrade.
It seems tiny.
Compared to you can, but hope you don't migrate anything in the wrong
Yeah,
direction.
just from a test perspective, we don't want to. Testing that mixed mode is just a disaster because we
Well,
haven't got any way to test it, right?
Yeah.
No.
You were talking about like volume-backed multi-attach instances going from Newton to Mitaka and exploding.
Not just volume attached, but volume attached.
Yeah.
Anything with a, you get them both on a Newton compute, and then you try to migrate, or you migrate you end up with them both on a Mitaka compute, and then it doesn't have all of the stuff to do.
Okay.
So another good reason not to, another good reason not to try to do the single export thing is you've got two instances that share volume on two separate computes, and you migrate this one to run on the same compute.
Yeah.
And you've got to figure out
So
now you have to.
So John doesn't have to get all his Cinder side stuff into Mitaka, right?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that works for us. So, could any of you follow that on the other end?
No.
Kind of.
The summary is, when you've got a mix of Mitaka and Newton computes and you're halfway through the upgrade, we'll just make sure that multi-attach isn't possible. And so multi-attach will only work once you've got a fully upgraded Newton Nova. That seems the nice, simple, the thing we can actually test.
Seems the safest approach.
Yeah.
Right. So if we say that, it means that we don't actually have to get anything more merged in Mitaka to be able to do that thing in Newton.
Right.
What if Cinder is at Mitaka?
That
And
seems
doesn't
like the thing to do, and that gives us some time to figure out what to do on the Cinder side, especially with respect to the drivers that can only export one volume.
Yeah.
And what if you get a...
What if you have Newton Nova with all of our stuff, and we're like, it should work, but you have an upgraded Cinder?
We should have a micro version from them or something, right? Don't we have a version API to tell that they haven't done the newer stuff yet? No?
No.
Well, we need that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess that means for Mitaka, concentrate on Cinder, making sure we get an individual export for every volume.
But you could be running
I mean, you could be running crazy
Kilo
old.
Cinder. And
Ideally, we need some way of knowing whether
we can disconnect volumes.
we can actually do disconnect, yeah, safely.
Yep, exactly.
So I don't know what we do.
Yeah, ideally, I don't want to get that from the Cinder API over time either, because that seems, I guess we just cache it, but...
Like the version?
Yeah.
Or with the capability?
Yeah, is there some capability we can get from the Cinder API so we know whether we get an export for every single volume?
Not currently. The only thing that we have in the capabilities right now for drivers is whether the driver supports multi-attach or not.
I just mean from the API perspective, I want to be able to discover whether you've done the fix or not. depending on which version of Cinder we're looking at.
If they've not exposed any kind of versions or capabilities, then Nova would potentially try to do this with a very old Cinder that is multiple versions back that won't work at all.
We're worried about Newton with old Cinder, basically.
With the micro version. So,
Icehouse. It's Icehouse.
That new. It probably is. Yeah.
I think we can handle that because what I was looking at doing was changing the basically the volume reference to instead on the attachment return a single IQN and target blah blah blah. Instead, just change that to a list. It's not pretty, but what we could do is on the Nova side then, that response, you could look and say, if it's a list, okay, it's a multi-attach, it's the new version.
But don't we have to opt into that? Because then you've just broken all the old Novas.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other way to do it, which I guess would probably be better, is to leave it like it is today, but add an additional field that may or may not be there, right?
Right.
And I won't break anybody. If you're not looking for it, well, you should have never gotten here in the first place, and it won't work, so don't bother.
So the API version of the thing?
Hey, do you have API versioning on your roadmap?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we do. We just talked about it yesterday.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a harsh dependency, but I mean, the API versioning would give you the ability to fix up the mess that you're leaving behind with that thing, I guess.
Is there anything in like the connection info or the connector dictionary or something that can tell us?
I think that's what they're adding.
So not to the REST API.
Oh.
Right. John, were you talking about the REST API or the connection info?
Neither. I was actually talking about the volume object. I was talking about the object itself. So.
But Nova gets that back through the REST API.
Correct. Yeah, it's a return object. It's a return from the REST API, but it's not an API call. So I'm not jacking with anything in the API itself, other than adding an additional item onto the end of it in terms of the response.
Right. So there's additional stuff.
Sean's head will explode, right?
Well, I don't want that.
Yeah. I mean, I get what they're saying, but
yeah, I know.
It's show some goop in the API that you can look at.
Yeah, if that's bad juju on you guys' side, that's cool. I can come up.
I don't think we care. I don't know.
I mean,
John, I told you to add micro versions many times.
Oh, I know. We're getting there.
I think John is getting up to
John, would it help to create a new API that gives Nova a chance to ask all of the attachments for a particular host, and we have all the volume IDs on there?
So
we could do that.
On the surface, I think that's a great idea, and that sounds good. But I think
poke the bear.
So just a question.
So Sean's woken up.
How do they break their API? Are we proxying this data so that we break our API?
But if they are, they've already broken this multiple times, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we already have like a volume attach API that returns all this stuff. We have not changed. We don't pass like the multi-attach flag back yet. We'll use a micro version for that, Newton.
How about I take a swag at this and write it up and kind of actually lay it out and show what's in the reference and everything, and see what you guys think from there.
Yeah, this is why I was asking about the connection info dictionary, because it's just a mystery blob that comes back on the REST API.
Yeah, that might work. The problem is the change that I'm looking at making is actually further down on the target side before you actually have a connection.
Yeah.
In trying to map those two together, I don't like trying to go down the path of mapping the connector object to the target object, because then if you're going to go through that trouble, then you might as well go back to the whole thing of sharing the damn connection, because you have to do the same logic.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess, yeah, it's write it up. Let's have a look at it, I guess. That's the action.
I mean, otherwise the alternative is Nova has a if check on disconnect.
If what now check? If multi-attach.
If multi-attach and we have more than one attachment, you can't call disconnect to brick in Nova.
Correct. Yep.
Ugh.
The thing that you didn't want to do. You wanted them to self-contain all this, but
we can do the same.
That's one of the reasons why I suggested the new Cinder API to fetch the list of attachments for that host, and then you can go through that list. And then Nova doesn't have to store it. It just asks Cinder.
I'm confused. If you have multiple actual paths, you can disconnect the one that you need to disconnect, right?
So I don't know.
Yeah, it's just a multiple thing, right? Everything's got its own export. We kind of know what we're up to. Right?
It behaves the same way as a different.
Yeah, we've got the attachment ID, so we can do the detach. We just need to not kill the other ones when we do the detach, right?
We need to not kill all processes that are related to that volume or something. We just need to kill one that we are working on.
Correct.
But doesn't Brick do that for us?
Brick only does what you tell it to do. It doesn't know, apparently.
Yeah. But Brick is very stupid in that respect. It does exactly what you ask it to do. You tell it to remove something, it removes it. It has no database. It has no way to determine how many things are using that path at all.
Well, it'll be one. It'll be one thing using that path if we do the multiple.
Yeah, the multiple case then.
Right.
When we're safe. Right.
Yep.
So nothing in Nova?
So this sounds like,
I think we're good. Right?
Mitaka, nothing more in Nova. Newton, we obviously need to land all the multi-attach support, the API, the libvirt, the other bits. And we also need to add into that plan the service version check to make sure that we don't allow multi-attach until the upgrade is completed.
And some way to know that Cinder has fixed the disconnect.
Yeah, and we need to be able to discover whether we're allowed to disconnect. So if the multi-export's working or not, right?
Okay. I'll work with John and we'll come up with a way of fixing that part of it.
Yeah, and then, I guess that's what we were saying is that John will write up the solution to the multi-attach
cross-project something. Or Cinder something, I don't know.
No, I just Cinder's fine.
Yeah.
We can put a Tombstone reference in the blueprints or something. It's fine.
Okay.
Yep. Like the Tombstone?
Maybe.
The pizza?
Pizza sounds good.
All right.
That's good.
Just one quick question. We had a discussion, I don't know, 2 weeks ago about this service version check and the API workers and the cache problem. Do we have it solved?
Yeah, so Dan, are you worried about this caching issue you brought up with the version check? Because we would still have that problem.
Yeah.
If you cache in front
load balancing
Because
the API.
The service version, so what the problem would be is if you have some...
Oh, you need the atomic.
Yeah, if you have some APIs that have realized that the bump has gone, then you could be like doing multiple calls, and one would, the first one would say, yeah, no problem, then you go again and it'd say, no, you can't do this.
It's
so
true.
That is really ugly.
I mean, if you're wanting zero downtime during the upgrade, you're going to have your A, B APIs draining to the A, moving to the B. And if you do that really late, you can do that at the point where it will always get the correct service version, right? Like if you do the API last.
Right, but it basically means that people have to have a real load balancer in front in order to prevent that, right? Like if you're using PSSH.
Yes, that's true. You have to have a real load balance in order to have the zero API impact with consistent responses.
Right, forward moving only responses.
Yeah. Which is not awesome.
So, a good thing you brought that up.
Well, I brought it up so that we don't have to land anything else.
I know we can't land it at Newton either.
But
wait, that feels less bad than us just having parallelness.
Well, it certainly feels less bad than allowing it and you failing because you hit a Mitaka compute. You don't know why it failed, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah.
I mean, sig up all the things, do it kind of quickly.
Yeah.
I know it's not perfect, but
I don't know. I mean, if that's a compromise that we make, then that's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
It's a dodgy window that's hard, but yeah. I'd rather that than have to try and set up some kind of memcache thing between them all.
Well, right, that's what we were talking about. In order to do this kind of consistently in the future, we're going to have something.
Yeah, I mean, Cells v2 might mean that we have to do memcache anyway, so.
Right.
That's probably in the road. It's just not
I think the PTL should decide if that's an okay caveat.
Seems fine to me.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I'll say that's okay.
Okay, so basically we said we're okay with that problem.
No.
Well,
what we said is we're not okay with it.
We're not okay with it, but we're gonna. But that's
very nice.
Yeah, but that's being okay with it.
So it will hurt less than if we prepare the Mitaka computes now, and kind of don't have issues theoretically with the mixed environment.
The problem is we've got no way of testing the mixed environment. So it's just good. I'd rather have the let's leave it all to Newton where we can do it without rushing. And let's.
Well, Matt already wrote out the Tempest test which runs. Anyway, just asking.
But
that doesn't run in mixed versions, right?
No, it doesn't run a mixed. It's not a multi-node.
It's not something that seems critical enough to destabilize multi-node grenade and all that kind of. Let's just not go there. If we just say once it's all in Newton, then we allow it. And the edge, because of the caching, means that you'll have to sig up all of your API nodes before they start consistently allowing multi-attach. But
and even if we were to make that job a multi-node job now, we won't know that it actually works until Newton.
Right.
So we'd be backporting fixes. If we got that job working in Newton, we'd probably be backporting fixes to Mitaka to fix what we couldn't test until Newton comes out.
Yeah. So the summary is we haven't got an Oracle, so let's just only do it in Newton when everything's Newton. Yeah, because we can't test with a Newton API in Mitaka, basically, right?
Right.
But,
well,
a mixed environment means that we have the latest API and a mixed compute environment, right? I mean, if our Tempest test is running successfully for a full Mitaka environment with all the multi-attach changes, then I assume that kind of a mixed environment will not really introduce changes there.
Well,
no, because you won't be able to multi-attach any volumes.
The test passes, except for the thing where you disconnect all your attachments when you didn't mean to.
You can't do that test with any multi-attach volumes if you don't have the API bit landed.
No, it's the test pass. It does it because we don't have a micro version yet in the API.
With the depends on in Tempest, you already can test it actively. The only changes which are really not tested is the API changes to return all the attachments on the Nova REST API, but it's really not critical.
Multi-attach works because we haven't stopped it. You mean?
Right.
What? Okay, I think we need to not do that.
Yeah, we need to
fix
fix
land
that.
something to make it not work.
Yeah.
It
Multi-attach works with the API patch, which allows it in the compute API, but within. Anyway.
My Tempest is testing. It's dependent on her libvirt driver change.
Oh, that's different.
There's nothing in the API right now that says, like, unless you're at some micro version of Nova, you could do multi-attach. That's what we said we would land in.
So you're saying that as soon as the libvirt part lands, the REST API would technically let you do it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we land that libvirt patch, we have to.
Yeah, we have to block that.
Right.
Because that was my key comment on that patch is, by the way, you just accidentally enable this for all the other drivers that don't work.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only other thing, I'm kind of confused a little bit, because so if we go down this path, if I do the multiple targets and just treat them as separate connections, like we talked about, you guys don't even need to do anything on your side.
Yeah.
I mean, it just worked, because the only place that enforces any of this right now is on Cinder anyway.
That's not, well, so the stuff we've had to land already is the stuff where, so if you've got we need to tell libvirt that the multi-attach is happening so that it doesn't start stomping on its storage in nasty ways with the cache.
What I'm saying is, I see what you mean.
So and the stuff that we've landed already.
It only happens if the compute API says that, okay, multi-attach is good. So we have a blocker there. I mean, we will not enable multi-attach just because of landing the libvirt patch. But if it's enabled in Newton, then it would work for Mitaka computes as well.
Yeah,
What does that libvirt patch actually buy us, though?
The libvirt patch will add the shareable flag to the config XML to the disk block.
It kind of buys us.
With this, it will tell libvirt to don't use cache and stuff like this that would corrupt the volume, and that's all.
Yeah, well, I think it buys us data integrity.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the reason so from a block perspective, though, the problem is you have to have a file system that does that for you, right? You don't necessarily have to have you don't necessarily have to have the libvirt piece, but I mean that's cool. I was just curious for my own education because I wasn't really following some of the requirements on the Nova side, because with the proposal that I have, I've been using that just and making it just work by faking out the Cinder API.
Yeah, I mean the current stuff that we've been changing, that we've merged some of, was more along the lines of when we passed the API information down to the compute layer, we didn't have enough information to know which volume to remove.
Gotcha. Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, some of the information, we just weren't specific enough, which is some of the stuff we have to fix up. So, I mean, that's the key problem, is we need to fix that now so we don't break when we've got other things happening on the other side.
Well, and I'll do some homework on my own and read up on the libvirt stuff, because that's kind of interesting. I didn't know there was a special.
I think we lost
Uh-oh.
something. We don't have sound now.
We definitely lost something. Oh, they've muted. Right, they've muted.
Oh. They want to talk to themselves.
Do you know you're muted?
Well, they muted us as well in this workshop.
True.
Dylan seems alarmed.
Kurt is disconnected, and it seems that he was the microphone for the group.
Ah. That works.
How's it working here?
Yeah, it's on the chain. Cool. So I think that covers that piece. What was the next piece on the list?
So, Matt, we have merged all of the stuff that stops using that method that I deprecated that just takes the top first, right?
I believe
so. We're clean for not corrupting the database later.
I believe so. Okay. We were just checking that, yeah. We've merged the patches that stop us corrupting our database, which seems good.
You mean the libvirt one, or?
No, the one where we make sure that we don't just pick at random one of the attachments and delete that.
Okay.
So that's good.
So we are still blocking the libvirt patch?
Yes. We're blocking all the remaining patches until Newton, because the whole thing can only ever work in Newton because of that not specific enough information coming down problem.
How do you mean not specific enough information coming down?
So,
maybe I lost a few parts of the discussion, sorry.
If you're running, if we merged all this stuff in Mitaka, during an upgrade you'd be running Liberty and Mitaka. I'm trying to remember the reasoning now. Like, how do we actually manage to corrupt the database? I can't remember the use case. Basically,
it assumes that there's only one attachment to a single instance
right.
of the database, and if it just pulls the first one whenever it's looking it up.
And there's no unique constraint on block device.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can have multiple instances in the same volume BDM.
But our service version thing might just fix it.
No, we already fixed it, right?
We needed to fix this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we needed to fix it already. It's already fixed. Why are we talking about this?
Yeah, it's fixed.
Yeah, it's basically because we don't, when multi-attach starts going into the database, we need to be aware that we need to select the correct one, otherwise we just pick at random, and there's no error handling around it.
Okay.
Yeah, what I asked is really just that libvirt XML flag in the compute, in the Mitaka compute. I mean, it should not have anything to do with the BDM.
Well, the thing is that that code can never be used in Mitaka. So let's just land it in Newton.
Right.
Okay, I just try to avoid that service version check stuff if possible, but if it's not, then it's not.
Yeah, we've got no way of testing it until Newton anyway. Let's just land it in Newton.
That seems safer all around to me anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My work here is done.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not convinced, but well, it happens, I guess.
I'm
Okay.
looking at the list of other stuff we were going to talk about.
So, one thing that came up yesterday that might be fairly quick was the Cinder nested quotas are
Oh, I see that now.
they're broken, and we don't know what the fix is going to be. It might be architectural. It might be throw it away and do something completely different. But someone had brought up that Nova, someone is working on nested quotas in Nova that is similar or based on Cinders.
Yes.
And we wanted to say, don't do that, and or we should sync up whoever's doing that with what we're going to do to fix it, and just maybe at least have a better implementation and a common implementation.
Yeah, that makes sense. The nested quota. I don't think we've merged it.
Who's doing that? Do you have that handy?
Let me just cut. I'm going to cut and paste into the Cinder channel the blueprint name.
Is that still a plan for Mitaka?
It's just hit feature free, so it's likely to just get deferred right now.
Okay.
Okay. Look, if you don't merge it, there's no urgency, and we can just make sure whoever is working on this in Nova is talking to whoever's doing it in Cinder, and that's kind of was our point of bringing this up.
So no one else has it merged besides Cinder?
I'm just double checking the merge status. It's just Wi-Fi not fasty.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure that we keep communicating on this. We just wanted to make sure you didn't merge something that we don't like and is broken, and it will break you.
What was the use case that's causing the complete? Well, what's the use case that's disrupting that?
I think it's Ryan. You want to step up? We'll come over here and get on camera.
So there's a few different ones right now. If you use -1 as the limit for any of the child projects, it just completely doesn't work. There's a few different issues with using -1, and there's also been a few issues trying to use the default value, trying to enforce if you haven't explicitly set quota limits on the child projects, it's totally busted.
Because you have to default to 0 if it's a child tenant, don't you?
Correct. And right now, we're not, in the current implementation, it's not actually enforcing the child default values of 0.
So that's totally broken, I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then there's also issues with, right now, if you set the limit to be -1 for a child project, it's not actually checking against
It doesn't do the parent.
Its parent, yeah. So.
Got it.
So yeah, I'm digging through some of that right now and trying to see if we can make it work for the current implementation. There was also a dependency because you weren't able to to get the project from Keystone if you weren't an admin user, which was causing issues because then you couldn't get any of the parents for things like a create volume because you're not an admin user. But I think that fix it. It's about to land, so that'll help some. But basically, there's been a lot of issues, and so yeah, we wanted to make sure that you guys weren't.
No, that's cool. Yeah, no, I appreciate the heads up. It's the one time we're kind of lucky we haven't merged it. Well, not the one time, but hey. So, yeah, the thing I was trying to check is to make sure that we didn't have to change the semantics. It sounds like the semantics are good, it's just that the implementation doesn't implement them.
Correct.
So, yeah, that's okay. That's not so bad. I was just wanted to make sure that we hadn't found some flaw in our assumption set. I know I was a bit worried that it actually restricts the use cases, because in my head I'm always assuming, in my head I wanted to assume overcommit for the child projects and default to using all of the parent.
Yeah.
But it's the exact opposite use case that no one really cares about. Was the conclusion we came to?
Sorry, say that again. Were you talking about, like, defaulting to -1 for the child projects initially? Or
So,
I'm just...
Yeah, so the current nested quotas is basically, I want to explicitly hand out a little bit of quota to each of my children, right?
Yeah.
There is the opposite use case, which is I just want to restrict a few of my children to not eat too much of the pie.
Yep.
And the current semantics don't really support that.
Yeah, and so, yeah, and we had some interest in that as well. Basically, yeah, by default, share with, the parent quota, but, that's sort of a discussion for, I don't think that would be too hard if we...
When we looked at the implementation for us, it was a massively simple optimization, because if you basically say the sum of your children plus the usage of the parent can never exceed the parent, you don't need to walk the full tree. If you say you end up having to walk the full tree of hierarchy if you reduce that constraint. So you kind of need to check the parent of the parent to make sure that you haven't exceeded their quota because you're not restricted by default, kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think we're going to run into that issue anyway, unless so that's talking about the default. But right now, there's nothing in the blueprint or being enforced that says you can't set the child limit to be -1.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think we were enforcing the child limits. Well, I can't remember what it was now. Anyway, hey ho, there be dragons. Let's talk about it once you fix the dragons.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So who's...
Sorry, 1 second. Were there any more questions on that? That's probably just me now anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Still on this.
Oh, yeah. So it looks like the next thing in is that back to multi-attach, the multi-attach patch that just landed passes in the host and the instant ID for attaches, but if this passes that into say an older Cinder Liberty server, it will break it.
Yeah.
So how do we fix that?
Why will it break?
Because right now the Cinder API doesn't know, the old Cinder API has no idea what to do with that extra value.
It actually checks if they're both passed in and passes an exception.
Oh, right. Right, so in which case the fix is we revert the patch now and then try work out what to do.
Or you could handle that error and then revert back to the old behavior.
Well, that's true. It's just, actually, do we do that? No, we don't, do we?
What?
We don't just look at Python,
If we send you examples, there's half a dozen or so CIs that are failing ever since that patch landed because they don't rebase.
So somebody push a patch to revert it out of Nova.
Yeah.
When I saw the Cinder change, I thought it was it smelled like an API change. And
Yeah, you were definitely right. Unfortunately, I didn't see it, but
this is why I asked on the Cinder channel whether it can be backported in Cinder. I mean, so that it would work together with at least the Mitaka Liberty.
We can't do that because we'd have to backport it at the beginning of time and get everyone to upgrade.
right. That's not a solution to that problem, unfortunately. It'd be nice if you could do that, but
yeah,
that doesn't work.
Yeah, it's not a thing.
But there's a exception. If you just catch an exception, well, no, you can't, because the problem is Cinder blows up. So
can we add a flag into Cinder that somehow tells us where we have to pass that thing in?
Sure. I mean, we can do anything. It's just code, right?
Yeah. Because what I'm thinking is, in a microversion world, we check we just look up your microversion and go, oh, you don't support that thing. That's cool, and do the old thing.
I know, microversions.
But I'm trying to think of what can we do in the equivalent time frame while you don't have that.
So.
Well, equivalent thing, sorry, in a decent time frame.
Yeah. I don't know. Honestly, I haven't spent enough time looking at that one. I just figured out what the failure was and spun off. I don't know.
So, do we have a link to the patch, actually?
I know.
Okay.
So unless somebody else wants to revert it, I'll revert it.
I can do it. Not an issue. But what to do after we have it reverted, and then how to solve the issue that we try to solve with that patch?
Well, so I think you can still solve that issue and pass both in. We just have to find a different way to do it, right? And a different way to do it may be a new API call, or it may be have a way to catch the error coming back from Cinder. The problem is on the Cinder side it's broken too, because on the Cinder side we send the call down to the manager, which doesn't know how to handle it, and that's where it blows up.
Mm-hmm.
So
no, it's in the API. It's in the API. The check is in the API before it gets to the manager.
I don't think that's.
It's API check as far as I know.
So we could put that check back in and catch it and handle the exception. But it doesn't solve the problem for people that already have it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look at that closer. I'm not sure what the right answer is. I would like to see the patch reverted on the Nova side and the Cinder side for now until we figure out a way to make a compatible version of it.
Yeah, let's just revert that because that's clearly wrong.
Okay.
Sorry.
Stuff happens. I'd rather do it now than after we actually send RC out, right? So that's good.
It looks like at the bottom is a DRBD transport. I don't know who put that on there or who wishes to talk about that. That's probably a brick issue, maybe? DRBD transport.
Oh, Philip Merrick is the one who did that, I think.
Is the spec approved? It doesn't look like the blueprint's approved. Oh no, it's accepted. It's marked as. Oh no, that's. I'm confused.
Well, the person may not be here, so we may move on.
I'm not sure what he wanted to cover with that.
Oh, that's the Cinder.
Yeah.
There's no Nova blueprint on the patch.
Oh, it's a Nova patch that links to a Cinder blueprint. Okay.
All right. Well, so it looks like Philip has some work to do, and we should move on.
Yeah, we're past our non-priority feature freeze for Mitaka at this point.
Yeah.
So it's reproposed the same spec for Newton, basically. We're open for Newton specs now.
Okay, well, we have some stuff. We didn't sync the Etherpads completely. So I don't know, I didn't see anything else on the Nova Etherpad for discussion. Or is that look correct?
Yeah. I think, yeah, we're on line 209 on the Nova Etherpad, and we seem to have covered all the things now.
Okay, if we have a couple things that didn't make it, that we didn't sync, so there's some things on the Cinder pad. Do you have that link?
Okay.
From the Nova one to link over to the Cinder one.
Okay, yeah, at the top of the node, link to Cinder. It's number one is checkpoint on extend attached volume functionality. Has any who put that there?
Was that work you or Gerald? Right. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, so I see there's a Nova spec that's up for review, but it's for Mitaka, right?
Well, we missed Mitaka on that, so we knew that much and wanted to make sure that we don't miss Newton at this point. So we've got specs out there on both sides. If we can, you know, keep that moving forward, are we going to be able to get the Cinder side ready in Mitaka, or do we want to hold it all till Newton?
I think at this point we should hold off until Newton. So what I did in OS Brick is I added all the code to support iSCSI and FC volumes to do extend for attached volumes. That code is in there.
Okay.
It'd be great if people can test a little bit more. Kendall tested it, I tested it, but obviously we need a lot of changes in Cinder and Nova to make that happen. All of the hosting stuff on the Nova Compute host to recognize the new size for both single path and multipath is in Brick itself. We just need the mechanisms to have the API allow the call in Cinder, and then have some callback from Cinder to Nova to say, hey, someone on Cinder just asked to extend this volume, call Brick to recognize the size, and then do the lib version type stuff to let the guest know.
So this is, let me just check, this is basically resize volume, effectively.
Yes. Growing.
Grow volume, right. That's a good distinction.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how does Nova have to be involved with grow volume?
So, go ahead, Dave.
No, go ahead.
Is this pause writing to the volume while you grow it?
No, it's the iSCSI. The iSCSI connection needs to be reset, or you have to use another method to actually notify, to update the instance so that it knows.
But isn't that going to cause like an outage in the guest?
It shouldn't be able.
No, it shouldn't. The volume is still available. The code in Brick that I've done and tested, actually, you don't disconnect the volume. The volume is still there. You can still use it. It just, the host kernel itself recognizes that the size of the volume is now a different size.
So the I/O path never goes down. It's always there. It's just it recognizes that it's now more space than it was.
Yes.
Okay.
And the hypervisor notified that the size as well. Otherwise, the guest will never see it.
So what you need is an API in Nova for you to call back to say wiggle the thingamy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
With a better name, but yeah.
I like that name.
I don't know. Yeah, I like that.
Wiggle volume.
Yeah.
So almost all the heavy lifting for the host side stuff is already done in Brick. We just need to have Nova pass that information to the hypervisor and then on into the guest. So
I think the next steps here are that spec just needs to get moved to the Newton directory. It's proposed against Mitaka, so yeah, just move that across.
Okay. Yeah, we can get that fixed.
Okay, number 2 is the same thing we just discussed, mentioned BRBD, so it's mentioned.
Yeah.
Number 3 is the nested quotas, we talked about that. Number 4, we talked about that. That's the instance in volume attached breaking.
Sweet. Now that looks good.
A
bug for the.
Is that it?
Yeah. Can someone raise the bug and put the revert up as well? Oh, we need a bug for the revert. The revert's up.
I'll do it. John's
got it.
John's got it.
Sweet. Cool. I think that was the main things from our side. Were there any more Cinder questions over here?
Below there's Cinder API changes.
I don't think there's any concrete there.
Yeah, that doesn't look any
Yeah. There's other stuff.
instance faults. That's just us.
More API changes.
Oh, API stuff. All right. So I see the stuff further down here for like.
Yeah, it looks like the rest of that is really just more on our side.
Yeah, a lot of that looks like it's just our side. People put stuff in there that has to do with Nova, but I don't think. At the bottom, Cinder Nova API changes, but there is I wrote a spec for some Cinder changes. The only reason I bring it up is because it comes up for every single thing we do between Nova and Cinder. The multi-attach, it kind of brought forth all the clunkiness of Nova managing Cinder's database state. So once again, it's just something that's underway. Nicola in Tokyo said he was interested in this, so I'll get with you, Nicola. Make sure you're aware of what we're doing in Cinder in Newton, I hope, and then
Okay.
we can stay in sync. There's nothing to talk about there.
No, that's cool. It's a good heads up. Cool. Awesome.
Anybody else here in this room? All right, I think we should declare this a success.
Yeah. This worked a lot better than I thought.
Yeah, what about this evacuate thing and this instance host key that's getting added to the connector, Dick? Nobody?
Evacuate?
It's in your Etherpad in the middle.
Yeah, so
Down here.
So my coworker Mark Sturdivant has been working on this a little bit, and I'm somewhat familiar with the effort. But basically, it has to do with calling Cinder's terminate connection with the wrong connector information because it's on the wrong host, or we don't have the host information because the Nova compute host is gone, right? So it's similar in regard to force detach when Nova has no concept of the volume attachments, but Cinder still thinks the volume is attached.
I think it's a fundamental problem that Cinder doesn't have information to detach when Nova doesn't.
Yes.
Isn't this similar to live migrate? In the sense that you're changing the attachment from one host to the next.
Yeah.
Yes, it is similar, but in this respect, at least Nova can pass the correct host information at disconnect time because it can get it. Nova affects that connector information.
Oh, I see.
But since the compute host is gone, it can't collect that initiator side information to pass to Cinder to tell it who to detach and remove the target from.
Oh, so there's state on the host that Cinder doesn't have in its database, basically.
Correct. And the
So
host is.
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with that. I had a problem with the new instance host key because the connector dictionary already has a host key, and if that host key is wrong, we should just update that instead of adding new keys. Because I'd like to version that thing as an object, so we're not just passing mystery stuff around. Because it's an unversion API.
We're doing something similar with OS5lib for blobs we have from Neutron.
Sure.
Matt, I did start looking at your patch. I just haven't had time to play with it, and I saw
It's not even. This isn't even related to that, but it sort of tied. I mean, it is tied in, but I had no idea that this other thing was an issue.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's because of stuff like this that we sort of need to version these things.
Right.
Yeah. So I had, and this is somewhat related to force detach because it's the same kind of problem where the host Nova compute doesn't know anything about the attachment, right? So So what I was thinking is that we could store the connector information at attached volume time, and then Cinder will have it in its database. So in the case where the connector information is basically non-existent or wrong information, we can get it from Cinder's attachment table.
Makes sense. Yeah.
The problem with that is live migration, though, is because when you move the attachment from one host to the next, we currently don't have a way to update that information for that attachment. So it may need a new micro-versioned API to support, hey, update because we did a live upgrade or a live migration, sorry.
I thought when we did the live migrate, we did call into Cinder and do some kind of update, but
we did because we asked Cinder the correct connection and comes back from initialized connection. But
right.
Since Nova has access to the compute host, it can get the right connector.
Oh, okay.
There's another case that's a bit odd, which is
you might want to.
Yeah. When we got a shelved instance, a shelved offloaded instance, it's not on any host, but it still stays with its connection.
Oh, yeah, yeah. When you've got a shelved instance, we want the instance to still be logically connected to the volume, but it's not actually, the host connection's long gone.
So from Cinder's perspective, it's still attached, right?
Yeah, it's in use, yeah.
So it's similar to live migration, but it's kind of a longer time gap. So we still have the same issue of needing to update the connection info after you unshell by
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds the same. Wait, it's probably migrate's probably a better example. So migrate, right, is where you go from host A to host B, but it's turned off in the middle. Shelve just has the turned off in the middle bit as a feature.
Well, actually, I was going to say we're changing shelved to make it so you can attach and detach volumes while it's shelved, which would then be a logical thing. But because of that, with Cinder, what we have to do in the patch is attach it to something that doesn't exist. So, because that's the only way we can get it into in use, otherwise it goes into attaching and stays there. Attaching for attaching a host.
Oh, yeah, because we want to attach it to an imaginary instance.
Yeah. If only we had multi.
So perhaps this new Nova API, or sorry, Cinder API to update connector information would solve all of these problems, or it could be designed so that it solves all these problems.
It does sound like, yeah, the evacuate. These all cases seem very related, right? It's that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's because in one case it's the null connection information, like it's not real, and there's the it was over here, but we've forgotten about it now, kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. Paul's nodding. It's good.
The other side of things, but I think it's a little early to get, a little late for Mitaka to get that stuff.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. No, that's cool.
All right, so I'll do that.
Yeah, keep pinging us. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
All right, cool.
I think that's everything. Approximately. Awesome.
Sounds good. Nice talking to you.
Have a good mid-cycle.
Okay,
right.
you too.
Thanks for your help. We really appreciate it.
Cool.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Can we do a break?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, you've been working hard, Walt.
Before we take a break, we need to get a number for dinner tonight. Does everybody plan on going out tonight, or